I wanted to discuss was the case going on with Diddy.
I mean, I feel like he's obviously just running and hiding from everything right now. There's also another person who filed another case against him. They're just piling on.
What a default judgment is like when a lawsuit's filed against you, you have a certain amount of time that you have to respond. And if you don't respond, what a default is basically saying there's certain rules throughout the country. And
Hey everybody, welcome to the Only Lawsuits podcast, where we cover lawsuits going on around the country, along with moments in pop culture. I am Joshua Mobijohn.
Michael Singh.
And we have a special guest today, Farah Nwaz, who's also part of the Kraken Law Group team. So let's hop straight into it, guys. So one of the first lawsuits that I wanted to discuss was the case going on with Diddy. From what I've read thus far, it seems that there's a default judgment placed against him for $100 million. So, Mike, what are your thoughts on that?
I actually watched the video, and I'm going to play it for us to listen to and watch. So, just to give the audience a little bit of an idea what we're talking about.
He's been told to cough up $100 million in a sexual assault case he blew off.
And I'd like to either preserve the issue of default judgment or judgment in my favor based on failure to answer.
Derek Lee Cardello Smith claimed Diddy drugged and sexually assaulted.
So, just so you're aware, and I know Farah probably knows this because I've told her it a million times, and she does these as part of her job. But so what a default judgment is like when a lawsuit's filed against you, you have a certain amount of time that you have to respond. And if you don't respond, what a default is basically saying there's certain rules throughout the country and there's state rules, federal rules. But in Florida, for instance, if you don't respond within 20 days to certain lawsuits, they essentially will say, okay, the clerk of court goes and puts a stamp on what's called a default and says, you agree with everything essentially, and the person that filed the lawsuit wins. But in order to get a default, you actually have to be served, which it seems like in this case he was served. And then on top of that, defaults are a little bit, depending on the circumstance, you can get out of a default as well. So Farah, you've dealt with some defaults before. I mean, and you heard $100,000 judgment. What do you think?
100 million.
Oh, 100 million. Yeah, sorry.
I mean, I feel like he's obviously just running and hiding from everything right now. There's also another person who filed another case against him. They're just piling on. One of the members of Diddy Kane, Dawn, a person from Making the Band, she's also piling on now too, saying that he sexually abused her and raped her as well. And they're just coming out of the woodwork now.
Yeah, and so and that's the crazy thing with default judgments, right? And I don't know. I think this one happened in Michigan. I don't know how it works with Michigan, but I know in Florida, like when we bring personal injury lawsuits and we serve someone, they don't respond. Generally what happens is we'll get a clerk's default and we then we still have to go for a trial on the damages. In this case, what was weird, I think the judge awarded him $100 million verdict. And what's crazy is, so on one of the videos I watched on this topic, he claimed during that hearing that Diddy came to the jail and was like, oh, I'll give you $2 million to make this go away. And that he was like, I'm not going to even respond to your lawsuit, blah, 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 blah. So when the judge was listening to all this, I thought it was really interesting because number one, settlement discussions aren't really allowed to be brought in front of the judge. And the judge did mention that to this guy. But secondly, what was crazy was $100 million, dude. And I think the payments on this are supposed to be like $10 million a month. So I think it's going to be real interesting on how Diddy's legal team handles this, number one. And I pray to God a lawyer didn't get served this lawsuit by Diddy, because if Diddy retained a firm and they told him to ignore this thing and he's in jail, he's a convict, it's going to go away. That's going to be a serious claim that Diddy may have against his lawyers.
That brings up a question for both of you guys. Number one, you kind of answered it with saying that it could have been legal counsel that he's gotten from his legal team but why do you think he chose not to respond? And number two, something that we've discussed prior is, do you think him trying to settle with Cassie right out the gate last year, or was it early on this year? But when she came forth with her lawsuit and he decided to settle right there and then, do you think that opened up Pandora's box for him? And or do you think, like, if he had chosen to fight that a lot of these lawsuits wouldn't be coming out of the woodwork right now?
Farah, you take a stab at that one first.
I think if he did try to fight that one, it would open up a lot of more loopholes for other people too.
I agree. And the reason I say that, I think personally, like, look, litigation costs are expensive. You know, we bill, on certain cases, we take contingency, meaning we only get paid if we win. But there's a lot of cases that we take and we charge an hourly basis just to retain us costs a significant amount of money. And I think that's kind of in that video, or in that, supposedly when Diddy and this guy were talking, that's one of the things he brought up was, I can't afford it. I've got different things I got to focus my resources on. And I think it involves the FBI investigation and stuff like that. So realistically, I think, you know, if I were in Diddy's position, I would look at it like, look, this guy's in jail. He doesn't even have a lawyer representing him. He did this by himself. He doesn't have a lawyer. It's pro se. So I think, you know, what he did was, like, he didn't take it seriously, which the bottom line is, like, lawsuits are a serious thing, man. And there's a lot to lose, because now, in order to get around that default, and I don't know the rules in Michigan, but in Florida, you got to have good cause and you got to prove that you willingly did not just ignore this thing. So it's going to be interesting to see how it pans out. But I do think that, yeah, it wasn't smart to ignore it, because now, look, the headlines are everywhere. You want to talk about opening Pandora's box? This is like, he just threw Pandora's box against the wall and shattered it, because now everyone is going to think they're going to go and get $100 million verdict. And literally what's going to happen is, you know, down the road, Diddy can just let this stack up and then try to, you know, claim bankruptcy or something. But realistically, if the FBI is investigating him like everyone's saying they are, man, he's not going to have any money at the end of this thing.
At this point, with all of the lawsuits that he has against him, I mean, the legal cost must be enormous.
Another thing, that a video that I was looking into, have you heard about the whole Jack Doherty lawsuit that's going on?
I've read some stuff about it, but I'm not, like, too familiar with like exactly what's taking place. I know, like, he's one of those influencers that tries to corral a reaction out of people.
Yeah, and I don't really know much about him. Do you know anything about him?
I don't know anything about sports. I'm a woman. Like, I don't pay attention to sports. I'm a woman who doesn't pay attention to sports. Let me clarify.
He's not an athlete. He's a TikToker.
Okay, sorry.
I know you're on the talk tick. I know you're into talk tick.
No, I'm not. I'm not in that generation. Sorry.
So listen to this shit,
This
right?
lawsuit's about to destroy the streamer's life the way he knows it, as it's likely going to become the most expensive thing he's ever gone through. So meet Jack Doherty, once a cringe YouTube kid who literally stalked creators to their own homes for content.
Right, and let me zoom out. Let me go up a little bit. So
For the sucker punch, you see Jack and one of the guys. I will never not see Jack as Randall from Recess here, as the stance and attitude is just identical. But one of his security guards, in combination with his own actions, have now landed him in one of the worst situations possible to be in as a creator, being sued. And not only by the victim, but also his own insurance company is suing him for this lawsuit as well. So this whole situation, it dates back to the Halloween party in 2023. And while most people have seen the viral clip of Jack's bodyguard just sucker punching this random guy, not too many people saw the context of the clip from Jack's stream. Because if you just simply jump back about 2 minutes before the sucker punch, you see Jack and one of the guys arguing about a comment Jack made about Karina Koff, who I believe was hosting.
Needless to say, this guy's going to go do a whole in-depth analysis on this. Like, I don't know any of these people, but evidently it looked like he was involved in some sort of altercation at a Halloween party, and his security guard sucker punched some guy, and obviously caused injuries, right? So like this kind of ties into what we were just talking about with like the costs of litigation, right? Because now this Jack Doherty kid is going to not only have to litigate against the person that's possibly suing him for, you know, the injuries or whatever it is, but the security guard was working for him. Therefore, essentially, he falls within, even though the security guard was the one that punched him, technically, he's an agent of Jack. He was protecting him, supposedly, right? I think it's crazy, you know, that this is something people should be aware of. Like when you hire people, you can be held liable for their actions. You know what I'm saying? So, and I think, I don't know, my family, like we can get a little aggressive sometimes. Me and my brothers, I have 2 younger brothers, and I know you've seen it as we've been growing up. We have, you know, gone toe to toe with one another ever since, obviously, you know, I don't beat them up now, but when I was younger, they used to get beat up, dude.
Yeah, they got their asses whooped.
You have siblings. Did you ever fight with your siblings?
Not so much as they fought with me. I mean, I have brothers, so like you know, we tussled. But if anything, I fought more with my cousins.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Because I'm the oldest sibling, so any of like the little scuffles that I had as a kid, they were more so with my cousins.
Here, I'm going to tell you guys a funny ass story from literally last weekend. So we had a Sweet 16 party, right? And everyone was getting hammered. My brother got intoxicated, and Matt, my brother, he wasn't drunk, but he stopped drinking because he knew he had to, you know, just be responsible. And just didn't give a shit. Latch was just like going balls to the wall, hammer, dude. So next thing you know, I leave because Jola, you know, my wife's pregnant. She wanted to go home. So I took her home, and I come back to go make sure if anyone needs a ride home, like I'll take them home, right? Bro, I get back at 1 a.m. My cousin is passed out in his truck, like throw up everywhere. And literally I'm just like, all right. So I get him in my truck, take him home. Next thing you know, the party was over and I wasn't leaving my house. So I wake up the next morning and I look at my phone, and my brother, so Latch was trying to drive home drunk. My brother was trying to stop him. Matthew was stopping him. Next thing you know, Latch grabs Matthew. They get into an altercation. Somehow, some way, my family thinks it's a good idea to try to break up a fight between us, which is never a good idea. It never ends well for anyone. And they grab Latch, pull him off, and my uncle's on Matthew. Latch breaks free and goes to punch Matthew, but he ends up punching my uncle dead in the face.
Collateral damage.
Oh no.
So yeah, I mean, I thought, like, when I was watching all this, I was like, man, my uncle could sue my brother and I can't represent my uncle. Although I do want to sue my brother as well, just because he pisses me off a lot. But yeah, it was an interesting weekend, man.
Alcohol usually leads to bad decisions.
Have you ever, so obviously, like, that's a normal thing in my family. How about you, Farah? You guys ever had any interesting fights like that in your family?
Not that I can think of. Not to that extent, no.
Yeah, no, this is pretty regular when we were growing up. Josh, what about you?
Not necessarily because of... Actually, you know what? No. There have been some scuffles that have broken out due to alcohol, but mainly because we, you know, as adults, when I would go out with my cousins, we would have like a big family group go out, and you know, you're having a good time, and then someone in the group, a friend, could be my, you know, a cousin, it could be you know, yeah, it could be, you know, like a mutual acquaintance. One thing leads to another, and then like a scuffle breaks out. So not necessarily at a family gathering, but definitely at a few bars.
Yeah, man. I mean, perspectives changed a lot. Obviously, Farah and I worry about. I mean, I don't know about Farah, but I worry about getting sued every single day. So I like. You know, the only time I'll ever touch someone is if I got to defend myself. But when I was younger, man, me and my brothers would go at it, and I guess we're just a very violent group of people sometimes.
I wouldn't say that. I mean, it's the alcohol, man. It's the alcohol, and it's like the West Indian blood. But that actually brings up a good point, because there can be lawsuits and there have been lawsuits that have taken place within families due to fights that have broken out, or due to disagreements that have also taken place, but also for people who are kind of caught in the middle as collateral damage. Like, I've seen lawsuits that have happened against, like, say, Good Samaritans that try to, like, help someone out. And, I think that's an entirely different conversation.
Yeah. And I know me and Farah work on cases against, and we do family cases together, and literally,
or family members who sue each other. I've experienced those. I've seen those.
It gets nasty and expensive, and it just really does destroy the family. So, like, look, my opinion is, and this isn't a legal opinion at all, if you're going to get into a physical altercation or a fight with your family, beat each other up, call each other in the morning, apologize. Works for me and my brothers pretty well. So,
well, at least now that we're attorneys, we fight with our words. That's what we get to do now.
Yeah, no, definitely not. I mean, believe me, I will fight my brothers if I can. If they touch me, I will fight them just because I want to, but it'll just be fun.
Well, speaking of fights, one thing that happened this past weekend was Tyreek Hill. He's a wide receiver on the Miami Dolphins. He got pulled over and had an altercation with Miami PD based off of his windows being too tinted. Mike, you saw the video?
Yeah, I'll pull it up for us. So, because as Farah indicated, she doesn't really watch sports that much.
Kind of throwing her into the fire on this one. So
let's see. I got the body cam footage, but
what's your speeding? Move forward.
Let's see. I'll stop.
You have your seatbelt on.
Don't knock on my window like that, no.
Like what?
Don't knock on my window like that.
Why you have it up?
Don't knock on my window like that.
Why you have it up? I have to knock to let you know I'm here.
Don't knock
that
on
way you
my
can
window.
lower it and talk to
Just
you.
get my ticket, bro, so I can go. I'm finna be late, gang. Do what you gotta do.
Like, I've never actually seen the body cam footage. I think it's interesting. Like, what he just did right there is actually pretty smart. Like, yeah, he's getting a little lippy with the cop. Cops get aggressive. I've seen it time and time again. They'll get aggressive when it comes to, your personal interactions with them. But, like, he'd said something really important there. Give me my ticket and do what you got to do, right? Mm-hmm. At that point, the cop should have just swallowed his pride, per se, and gone and give the guy the ticket, because he stopped him for a valid moving citation, tint citation, like, just give him the ticket. But sometimes what I've seen, and I'm not saying this happened in this case per se, but there's a lot of times that I've been pulled over personally where a cop will literally try to extend the traffic stop out and try to and do a little bit more investigating to see if anything was wrong. What do you think? How do you normally interact with cops when they pull you over if you get pulled over?
So first of all, I find it a terrifying situation. Like, I'm always so afraid that sometimes I can't even look at them in the eyes. But was it a moving violation, or was it just for the tint? Because I know, like, probable cause wise, they're allowed to pull you over for the tint, whether or not they know it's an illegal tint.
Let me see. Let's play it.
Keep it down. Hey, keep your window down.
So sounds like he put his window up, and then they
from what I gathered, it was specifically just from the tint. I think it's just like two egos clashing. The officer, in my opinion, he definitely overreacted, but I also think he overreacted because he felt disrespected by Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, and I just Googled something. It's on USA Today. Supposedly it's for speeding, 20 miles per hour over.
Speeding.
And I mean, look, but you're right. Whether it's, if they have probable cause to believe you committed a, violation.
A moving violation, traffic violation.
So, I mean, look, at the end of the day, it goes back to what he kind of said, though. Look, give me the ticket, move on. Like, don't extend the damn stop longer than you need to. But, I mean, I thought it was pretty interesting. It happened here in Florida.
What about your interactions with police officers?
Oh, dude, bad. I mean, I've never been arrested, but when I was younger, I was a real dick. I used to be very cocky, and I didn't even know the law, like that they can literally like arrest me for the dumb shit I was doing. But I would be I would be an asshole to them and disrespectful, but I was like 18, you know, I thought I knew everything. I didn't. Now, like, I haven't been pulled over in years, but literally, you know, 9 times out of 10, what I do when I get stopped. Last time I get stopped, I say, you know, what'd you pull me over for? All right, you know, give me my ticket. And the reason I say that is because, like, look, the more you talk to a cop, the more evidence they're building to you know, prove that you're guilty of something. There's a reason why you got the right to remain silent. And obviously just shut up, get your ticket, move on. Like, pay $100, $200 and move on. Now, you know, look, Tyreek Hill had the money. He doesn't, you know, I'm sure he's fine. I know he's got a lot of kids and probably has to deal with some child support, but at the end of the day, like, this could have gotten really bad. I guarantee you those cops didn't know he was an NFL player, number one. And look at the publicity that it did. Literally that same day, he went and scored a touchdown. And you know what his touchdown celebration was? Him holding his hands back behind him, you know, acting like he got arrested. Like, it sucks, you know. It's just shining a negative light on the FHP, but I think both parties were wrong. Be civil with one another, because look, I realized when I was younger, I shouldn't have been an asshole. Like, these people are just doing their job. I broke the law if I did or I didn't. You know, we'll figure that out in court. And that's the way I think you got to approach it.
Yeah, I feel like it's a pro and con, because sometimes I feel like the people who are being disrespectful also makes the cop be more disrespectful towards people too. Because I did have an interaction where I was being disrespectful. I mean, I was being respectful. And like I said, I'm like super afraid. I'm like a super rule follower, and I just get nervous and anxious and stuff. And like, I like dropped my driver's license like in between like my seat and my seatbelt. And then the cop was just looking at me like, oh, you probably don't even have a driver's license, because I was wearing a shirt that said child of an immigrant. Right. And he was looking at me like, oh, you probably don't even have a driver's license. I was like, I do. I just dropped it. If you just give me a minute. And
dropped it as you were crossing the border.
No, and he wouldn't even like let me reach for it, because he was just like, "Oh, what are you reaching for?" And I was just
get on the ground, get on the ground.
No, and then so like he wrote me up for like driving without a license, and like, you know, so I feel like it's a pro and con. Like, sometimes it gives them like this power, like, you know, this power grab, because, you know, people normally react with them a certain type of way. So then it makes them want to react a certain type of way.
I agree with that sentiment wholeheartedly. I mean, Mike knows I got into a lot of trouble as a teenager, you know, especially with law enforcement, you know, before turning my life around. And nowadays, like, you know, as an adult, you just try to be as cordial and as respectful as possible, because, you know, Mike hit the nail on the head. You're just trying to streamline that entire process for them to write whatever citation, write whatever ticket they're going to give, and then you can move on with your day. I can say that I've never really had, you know, as an adult, bad interaction with a police officer, but I think it's because I'm also going out of my way to try to be as respectful as possible, because you're also, you know, you're exposed to the news constantly, seeing how they react when they might have like their preconceived notions about you and what's going on. If you're going above the speed limit, they're finding any reason they can to.
Yeah, that's their job.
Yeah, that's their job.
Their job is to enforce the law. Now, I mean, whether or not they are superheroes that's up to them. I mean, but look, at the end of the day, my job is to sue certain people. Do I enjoy suing certain people? No. Do I want to sue someone's mother just because they, you know, want to prove a point? No. I don't want to sue siblings. I don't want to sue brothers. I hate driving a wedge in between people. Like, at the end of the day, people create these messes, and we're the ones, like lawyers and mediators, and people in our profession are the ones that help clear up the mess that people. We wouldn't have a job if people just were normal with one another and like acted reasonably. But thank God people don't know how to do that. It keeps me employed and keep doing these podcasts.
What do you guys want to wrap with today?
I say, we wrap with something I didn't really watch, but I know you guys watched a little bit more of it. Let's talk about the debate. Talk to me. Argue your points in the debate. What do you thought?
Personally, I thought that Trump was going to wipe the floor with Kamala. She hasn't really done any interviews. That's something that we've covered on prior podcasts when we have discussed politics. And based off of her previous performances in the last election cycle, she wasn't known as like a strong debater. But whoever coached her, and whoever her team was in preparation for the debate, they did a phenomenal job. I maybe it was because my expectations were so low that I was so impressed with her, but I feel like she did an excellent job navigating some tricky topics and also drawing Trump in to emotionally react to a lot of what she was saying.
Yeah. What about you, Farah?
I feel like my expectations were incredibly low to begin with because it was a step up from anything that it could be from Biden versus Trump, because it was just two angry old men just yelling at each other. So it was just a coherent person just being on the stage with someone else at some point, I guess. And then also, Josh brought up the point that, he was like, oh, I felt like she was smiling too much. And then I brought up the point that, like, you may not realize this, but then it's the difference between her having a scowl or then having a straight face, which is going to be, she looks like a bitch or she has a resting face. So she had to smile because then otherwise people are just going to have that comment.
See, me, like, I personally, I hate politicians. I don't trust them. I think they're all dumb. I'm still going to vote. You know what I'm saying? The way I look at it is I did see some clips and I saw some of her responses. They were impressive. Like, she was a lot more in tuned with, I guess, her approach and her style of debating, I think. I didn't watch a lot of it, I'll be honest with you, but the stuff that I have seen pop up on the internet with memes and stuff, like, I can tell Trump was a little thrown off and it wasn't his best night, because I watched a little bit of the Biden debate with him and he, demolished him, obviously, because he just looked way more competent. Yeah. And obviously Kamala Harris isn't the age of Joe Biden. She's definitely, an educated person. So she should be able to go, I expect her to go toe to toe with someone a little bit older, not as educated, not saying Donald Trump's dumb by any means, but at the end of the day, when I still don't even think the debate's a good judge of like the politics, because if I look at both people, right, and I sit here today and I look at gas prices here today and I look at the costs of items here today and I think about right before this administration was in place, man, I can fill my boat up for like half the price 5 years ago. I can buy, my groceries were 40% cheaper per se, and when I'm looking at it and as a regular everyday person, man, like, it's just the cost. Like, my costs 4 years ago were lower, and I correlate, like, you've already been in office, Kamala Harris. You've been in office for 4 years. There is no, I'm going to make a change when I get elected. Bitch, you're in office.
Yeah, yeah.
So, like, you had the power. Joe is seemingly incompetent. Pull a Dick Cheney. Take control behind the scenes. You know what I'm saying? That's what really kind of leaves me in the position where I'm at, where it's like, do I look at the glory days and do I want gas to go back to 189 or 187? Are you selling me on any? The one thing that I did watch that kind of pissed me off is she said, oh, gas prices domestic production is at all-time high. Well, why the gas price is so high?
Yeah.
Doesn't make sense to me. Oh, could it be, your deal, how your administration is working with OPEC to, modify and keep gas prices a certain way? So at the end of the day, man, I just want as an American citizen, all I want to do is be able to live my life, have the government intrude in it as least as possible. I don't give a shit which clown's in office, as long as they do what's right for the people of the country and don't play stupid political games.
I feel like the two-party system isn't listening at all to the people, because then they wouldn't have given us these two candidates. They wouldn't have given us Biden to begin with and then just shove over Kamala just to mollify the people who didn't want an old person anymore, who wasn't sentient, basically. Like, yeah, we've already had Biden and Kamala. We've also already had Trump. Why not give us someone else? They don't really care what we want.
Listen, the memes, though. Trump gets some good quality memes, dude.
Yeah, people are eating dogs.
That's a great point with what Mike made with the memes. I think that what it's become is a cult of personality. So I don't think that people focus in on the issues as much as they focus in on the likability of the candidate. So with someone like Donald Trump and even someone like Kamala Harris, when you look at both of their bases, people who are very split down party lines, when you ask them about policies that actually matter, they don't care, right? And that goes for supporters of Trump. That goes for supporters of Harris, where it's just like they're constantly bringing up stuff that's been said and not looking at the substantial policy behind each candidate. Yeah, politics, it's very, very tricky. You know, if you're not registered to vote, you know, of course, be registered. Your vote does matter.
Remember, Diddy said, rock the vote, baby. But don't do anything else Diddy did.
Don't do anything else Diddy did. That's a terrible example. That's a terrible example.
All right.
Well, Farah, thank you so much for joining in on our conversation today. If you like what we were talking about, please share, subscribe. We have some new interesting topics to discuss next week. And if you need a personal injury law firm,
Kraken Law Group, baby.
Only Lawsuits, sponsored by Kraken Law Group. Until next time.
Oh, we only work in Florida too, so don't call us for anything else but Florida lawsuits involving personal injury.
Bye.